Hey guys, real treat for you today. We have Mr. Airbnb, Braydon Ross, on the show. He's one of the biggest masterminds of Airbnb in the space. I can't wait for you to learn from him today here on the Fearless Investor Podcast. Hey, welcome in everyone. This is Kyle Stanley here with the Fearless Investor Podcast. And I just want to make sure if you have not already, you do two things. Number one, have you downloaded our Airbnb profit calculator? It's absolutely free. It's right there on our website, fearlesskyle.com. And after you download it, you'll be given an invite to learn more about our course, which right now to me is crazy underpriced. You can build a six-figure, nearly passive income business in Airbnb for under $1,500. That is super exciting to me. If I go back and do this all over again, I would have done it years before, and I definitely would have invested. I invested in a course. That's how I got started. You can do the exact same. And here I am 18 months later after starting and really saying yes, yes, yes to Airbnb and running over 25 properties and netting over $20,000 after expenses per month. That's where you can be too. Like anyone can do this. And that's exactly what I loved about having Braydon Ross on the show today. Braydon says exactly that. He was like, why is no one else doing this? Everyone should be doing this. He's got his own course. He's going to talk about that too. But he's doing something very unique here that I love. He's going to talk about more towards the end of the show. So please stay tuned. This is different than anything I've ever heard from anyone doing an Airbnb. So you definitely want to stay tuned to the very end where he talks about how he is utilizing other people's properties beyond the arbitrage and managing model. Think about it as just marketing. That's how exciting this is. So wait till the very end, but this is Mr. Airbnb, Braydon Ross here today on the Fearless Investor Podcast. Hey guys, welcome into the show. We are going across the seas right now with Braydon Ross from Canada, and Braydon is the self-proclaimed Mr. Airbnb guy. I'm excited to have you on the show today, Braydon. Thanks for being on.
Thank you very much. I love the self-proclaimed part.
Well, hey, you're backing it up though. I mean, you've got a lot of good stuff going on, and you and I got connected on Instagram. And after talking for a little bit, I'm like, man, got to get you on the show because selfishly, I want to learn more about what you're doing. But at the same time, I think other people need to know about this. So we are going to primarily be talking about Airbnb today. But before we jump in, what is your most interesting Airbnb story that you've got for our audience?
And like, honestly, I'm sure you can relate. Most Airbnb hosts, we've been through the ringer in terms of, bad guests. And we've had some fantastic guests. Majority of guests are great guests. But I think that one of my funniest stories, well, I wouldn't even say it's funny, things to look out for actually started during COVID. And what I found was I was starting to get guests as I started to lower my prices because nobody was able to travel. It was a lot of like local travel. And I actually have this on my Instagram. I filmed a video of me and police walking directly into my listing. So something to look out for is making sure that, you're not listed too low in terms of a price point because you're going to attract the wrong guests. So I'll give you an example. So my first Airbnb is, and this is not just an example, actually, this is the story.
Okay.
My first Airbnb is a 1-bedroom, 1-bath in Calgary. I bought that place when I was 21 years old. And I wanted to just live in it. I wanted to live there. I was running another company at the time doing Android TV systems, boxes, things like that for like Netflix, that kind of stuff. Not for Netflix, but we help people essentially leave cable and, push their, on-demand streaming. So I took that money, I bought this apartment, and I realized that I couldn't leave my country without actually having to physically do my work every day. So I wanting to go on vacation. I had recently split up with a girlfriend at the time and bought this place. So long story short, let's fast forward 4 years into recently. COVID-19, March 16th, the pandemic hit. Well, especially here in Canada, that's when we kind of shut down.
Right.
And I was still getting a few bookings, but I had to lower my prices dramatically. A lot of my students, if they were on a master leases where you re-rent the property, the owner's permission, were like, shoot, like we have to try to turn these into management deals so we don't have to keep paying rent or try to defer the rent. All these things were going on. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to lower my price from like $160 to like $90 to $80 a night just to get some income coming into that property to pay off, the monthly expenses. And so I got these guests and I woke up one morning and I get a call from the concierge and they said, hey, we've got some guests that are staying. We know your place is an Airbnb, but we've got a key fob going down to like the different floors. So what they were doing is they were breaking and entering into cars and then coming back up, and they had all the stuff, and they were going back to the apartment.
Oh
They're
my
going to cars
gosh.
back and forth. So they kept carrying stuff up all night from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. When people started going to work, and they stole all this stuff. And so I go knock on the door, and I'm nervous, and I have an extra key, and I've got the concierge, this little lady next to me. And I mean, I'm not small, but I'm not that big. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna try to call the police. So I ended up calling the police, and when I called them, they came and had an extra key. We went in, and there was literally stuff everywhere. There was stolen IDs, credit cards, there was drugs, there was everything. And so one of my biggest pieces of advice, sorry, we got family
That's
behind.
okay.
Um, and one of my biggest pieces of advice was just making sure that you properly vet these guests. And a lot of
Yeah.
the time on Airbnb, you're going to get the odd party, you're going to get these random guests, but actually these guests end up getting arrested. The full story is right on my Instagram. I filmed me walking into the actual apartment. The one guy was sleeping in the bed. He had a knife right there on him. And the lady woke up. She was in a panic. She said, I didn't steal anything. Cops came in. Obviously she confessed to everything. There was, like I said, drugs everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
And so I have funny stories with Airbnb, but I also have learning lessons with Airbnb. And one of the things I want to come on here is teach things to people that they shouldn't do with
Right.
Airbnb. And so I learned the hard way. And how they actually got in, if you're wondering, is I believe they had a real driver's license. They were homeless, but still had a driver's license.
Okay.
There was some stimulus check that was given out here in Canada. And it was giving people $2,000 a month. They call a number, they had a social insurance number. We don't have social security numbers, same thing. And they could get $2,000. They went and bought a prepaid Visa at Canadian Tire, it's called, and they booked the Airbnb. So you got to be wary on that
Wow.
kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
you can watch the whole thing on my Instagram.
Yeah. Well, and your Instagram handle, so we can get people over there.
Yeah, it's just Mr. Airbnb. No
Okay.
dots, underscores, anything. Just
Okay. Perfect. And I think we all had learning experiences, especially through COVID. I had a couple where I switched over to a regular month-to-month rental and had a couple of domestic violence situations. So I know about the cops showing up to our places too. But hey, let's get into your story though. I mean, give some background really quick. What were you doing before Airbnb and what brought you to it?
I was a full-time university student. I was doing it I was in university at three different, one college, two universities. And I'm from Calgary. It's just a city here in Canada. If you're not familiar, anybody listening, it's near the Rocky Mountains, right above California area, and the Vancouver side. So basically, I was a student. I was doing business management, and then I wanted to switch kind of and do more accounting. And so I was going into my fourth year of accounting. And I started a TV company. I called it Ross Box at the time. I didn't know what else to call it. My last name's Ross. And I grew it while I was living in a small little community with my parents. And I started posting on the local buy and sell group on Facebook and started doing free demonstrations on how these boxes worked. And then I'd go into people's homes, and if they wanted to purchase them, I would sell the boxes. I saved up some money and I bought that first apartment. And at that point, I remember in January, I left university fully. I dropped out, never got my full degree, but I have 2 diplomas. I could go back and get it, but at this point, I don't want to. I have a great accountant, and I don't want to learn how to be one.
Yeah.
And I don't like it. So I would rather just hire those people. And yeah, I realized I like to talk and I like to market. And so those two things came hand in hand. So I went from Ross Box, ran across a Ty Lopez ad when he created the social media marketing agency program, opened up my first marketing agency. I didn't know much at the time. My mom was working at a dental clinic as manager, basically, and I landed the boss there who owned 3 clinics as my first marketing client, and ended up becoming one of Ty's 300 rags to riches students from around the world to hit
Wow.
6-7 figures. So he wanted to showcase and take 300 people from around the world that went through one of his programs and showcase the ones that made 6 to 7 figures the fastest, and then start teaching. So I ended up running into him at GrowthCon 2 at Grant Cardone's event. And after he finished speaking, and they called me a year later, basically, after I commented on one of his Instagram posts to come out to LA and teach. So I taught in the SMMA program. The same time, I noticed this thing called Bitcoin that was trending.
Yeah.
And I was I was like, there's something here. So I was sitting in a coffee shop just before I headed over to Ty's, and I bought Bitcoin. At the time, it was $1,500, so
Okay.
1,500 US. And that following December, this is December 2017, Bitcoin hit 20,000. I sold it all, invested it, and unfortunately ended up investing that into a fake scam that I
Oh
lost
no.
95% of it all.
Oh my gosh.
So
Wow.
after teaching at Ties, I wanted to showcase and start talking about how I was doing this Airbnb thing. Because technically that summer is really when I started to push Airbnb harder. I went on a trip with a friend, and Airbnb paid for that full trip. It was the Calgary Stampede at the time. And I'm like, why isn't everybody doing this? You know, I just made $4,000 in 10 days during the 10 busiest days of the year in Calgary.
Yeah.
And that paid for, you know, my trip plus mortgage plus everything else.
Yeah.
And in a short amount of time. So I was like, what if I started using other people's properties? And this is, you know, in 2017, pushing in 2018, started calling homeowners and ended up asking if I could rent the property. I didn't know what a sublease was or a master lease. Said, can I rent your property and put it on Airbnb? No, 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 no.
Right.
I finally got somebody to meet up with me in person. She said, I'll give you the property, but I want $300 more a month. Okay, no problem. I'm just excited to get it going. So I basically went ahead and rented the property, listed on Airbnb. And then a couple months later, I got a call from her saying that the building was fining me for not, or for doing Airbnb, and they didn't allow it in that building. So again, another mistake.
Okay.
And, and so I started realizing that I could get Airbnbs by doing a co-hosting revenue share model with homeowners instead of
Yep.
having to put up upfront capital of
Right.
renting and deposit. So anybody listening that's just starting, and you've probably spoken this if you follow, you know, Kyle here on Instagram and all that, you know, you can do it multiple ways. There's multiple ways to go about doing Airbnb, whether you own, rent, manage, or even do what we do, partner with hotels and management companies. And so what I think is, for people that are getting started, I recommend doing like one of each just to know the difference.
Yeah.
Rent one property, try it out, do it locally so you can get used to the operating procedures in that area. And then if you want to start landing Airbnbs elsewhere, you got to get used to creating those automated procedures. And I know you
Exactly.
talk heavily about that.
Yeah.
And you know, being able to do that further away. So long story short, over the last 4.5 years, dropped out of university, did the whole marketing route, created a TV company, bought a place, tried Bitcoin. Airbnb has been something that stuck with me. I started teaching people 2.5 years ago now. I started teaching after I'd done it and
Yeah.
made success and mistakes so I could teach what people shouldn't do.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm at now.
Braydon, you and I have a very similar story. I mean, I think both entrepreneurs at heart and trying and succeeding at some things, but mostly trying and failing at a lot of things. And I just think that hopefully what the audience hears here is that you did not give up, especially, I mean, shoot, you make all that money in Bitcoin and then lose it in a scam. That's very easy at that point to say, man, I just need to go back and do something safe like a W-2 job. So what was it that was holding you strong to continuing down the path of being an entrepreneur rather than just giving in to the 9-to-5 job?
I think my biggest thing was I hated listening, and most entrepreneurs hate this. You hate listening to a boss tell you what to do.
Yeah.
I
Same.
really did. I mean, when I was literally like, my parents were talking about this the other day, like 6 or 9 years old on my way to like kindergarten. I asked if this all there is to life. I
Yeah.
hated the routine of knowing what I was going to have to do next. I wanted to create different options and freedoms that most people just didn't desire or know existed. And so for me, the reason why I didn't quit is because I was so addicted to the ability to be free and not listen to anybody tell me what to do, but
Yeah.
rather show people what I've done, what I failed on, what I've succeeded on, and kind of conglomerate that into the perfect formula for them to succeed.
It's good. It's good, man. I'm sure you get this all the time, but you mentioned some things there that I hear all the time in teaching Airbnb as well. And that is, oh, you know, I want to own a place by the beach. I want to own a place in the mountains. I want to own a place in Europe. And I just want to be able to Airbnb it. And then, you know, when I'm not using it myself, Airbnb it, but then go use it myself every once in a while. I know what my answer to that is, but I just heard you talk about like, hey, figure out your market, learn it, learn how to automate it, and then go try other areas. So I'm sure you get that from students, a lot of prospective students. What's your answer to that when you hear that?
Well, it depends on where they're financially at, I think, too, and
Yeah.
where they want to be in terms of the process. So what I mean is, like, if I have the money to go buy a vacation home, I'm sitting on some extra cash, and if I want to Airbnb it out, maybe I'm just a smart person that wants to be able to pay that property off when I'm not
Right.
there. Fantastic. I love that model. You could easily hire a management company for 15 to 30% at the most,
Yeah.
and to run that for you. Nothing wrong with that. Now, if
Yeah.
you want to learn it yourself, and maybe this is a side hustle that you want to do, I recommend you take yourself out of the comfort zone of just going to get a traditional mortgage on a property. Try to go manage or rent a property, and understand how that process works. And now everybody will have maybe an opposing opinion, but I think that the more knowledgeable you are on the process of Airbnb, yes, anybody can buy a home listed on Airbnb, take great pictures, and get it booked. But really scaling the business is really where the struggle comes in for a lot of
Yeah.
people, because you're going to have a lot of problems.
Yeah. I tell people all the time, because I think the majority of people that I'm talking to are not the first type of person, like you said, people who are just looking for an investment property as a vacation home and then pay off the mortgage. It's more so the people that want to build a business. And I always tell them, like, hey, why not just make so much money in your own back market that, or backyard, that you can just go travel anywhere, anytime, for however much you want, you know? Because to me, just like what you talked about, you've got to create systems, you've got to create teams, you've got to do all this stuff, that it's very difficult if you're just getting started to just jump into a place that is 2 hours or two states away from you, to just go and start automating that right away. It's very difficult. So what are some other things or tips? I know you're all about adding value. What are some tips if I'm just getting started and looking to get into Airbnb? You've already mentioned, try not to go the traditional purchase route, try to manage or to um, arbitrage or master lease, however you want to call it. What are some other tips that you would have?
Yeah, and and don't get me wrong, if you've got the cash to invest and turn properties into Airbnbs, but your intention is to Airbnb, sure, try it. But I'd rather go do a lease option on a property if I'm looking to buy that property, and that way I can test the property over a year's time instead of going to go onto a traditional mortgage and go to the bank and say, hey, I need a $1
Right.
million loan or 200 grand or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
You know. So sorry, what was your other question? What are other
No, yeah.
tips?
So outside of that, what are some other tips that you would have if I'm just getting started?
I recommend that you have to get a little bit uncomfortable. Like, I think for most people, where they fail in business is they just don't hit the numbers.
Mhm.
Like, they don't reach out to enough people. They get too many no's, or maybe they get one or two no's and they quit. And that's a lot of people. I mean, you look at anybody, and there's a reason why there's a low percentage of most successful people in this world, or people that can work for themselves and successfully continue to do that. And so my biggest tip for you is put out enough bait on there. And I'm not just using one platform. Actually, one of the major platforms that I teach is just simply using a platform called Hotpads. Hotpads is really good. And we filter out for rent by owner. And that's
Yeah.
a nice little filter, so I can directly get to the homeowner or sublet. And you can directly get in there. And so another system I use, other than like AirDNA, for searching for like properties and figuring out how much you can make on a potential property, for anybody hopping in, these are softwares that will show you how much you can potentially make on a property, but also show you where the market's pacing to. That's a new feature moving forward, and also what it's done in the past. So another software we use is called B&B Investor. A friend of mine created it down in Miami, and it's much like AirDNA,
Okay.
but it simply pulls how much you'll make after the cleaning fees on average are paid out. AirDNA shows you how much you'll make with cleaning fees, and that's a
Right.
big portion too. So I think that utilizing these different ways to understand where the market's at. A third one is called Mashvisor, by the way. So those three are how I actually analyze my deals.
Okay.
And then
Say the two again. So B&B Bester, is that what you said?
B&B Vestor
Vester. Okay. And
and
then Mash Finder?
Mashvisor.
Visor. Okay. So
Yeah.
B&B Vestor and Mash Visor. Got it.
Yeah.
I'm taking notes on that one, because are they similarly priced as AirDNA? Because that's one of my biggest struggles. I love AirDNA, but to have to get a membership for every like neighborhood is kind of frustrating.
It's too much. It's too expensive.
Yeah.
I actually looked into I had a dev team reach out to me and ask me, hey, if you push this, we'll build an AirDNA type software. I just go, okay, they got a lot of market share already, but can we make this more affordable? They said 100%, right? Like, you
Yeah.
can easily make that more affordable.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
yes, B&B Vestor is way more affordable for all the United
Yeah.
States. I believe it's $150 a month.
Okay.
And per state. I think it's like 70 to 80 per month.
Okay.
You can also do anywhere, I believe, in the world now.
That's great. Okay, cool. So knowing your numbers, I just think that's so important. And I think at the end of the day, that is what I hear from people is the toughest thing is even if they're just doing the arbitrage model or the managing model, when you aren't in it, it's really tough to say, okay, what am I going to make here? Because I always tell people you go into AirDNA and you're averaging out the best Airbnb hosts and the worst Airbnb hosts. And so if you see 50% is the average occupancy at $100 per night, well, are you going to be average or are you going to be better? And usually the answer is I'm going to be better, but still that analysis paralysis is so easy. In real estate, it's, hey, here's my mortgage and here's what the market rent is. And I know I'm going to have a $300 spread and then I'll put in, call it $100 per month for CapEx. With Airbnb, it's like, hey, there might be a slow season. There might be a hot season. There might be higher cleaning fees. I might have to refund a guest this month. I might have to replace a futon because Airbnb didn't cover the cost. Like there's all these different things and it can really paralyze people from making any sort of move. So how were you able to get past that? And how do you teach getting past that?
I've made mistakes on calculations before, 100%, which sucked. I mean, COVID really threw a curveball in a lot of that. But I started to learn that using the 3 platforms I just mentioned allowed me to cross-analyze the deal, and also hiring a virtual assistant that could go in and actually look at the data directly on the platform. The problem with looking on the platform directly is that if a date's blocked out, the host could have just blocked it out. You don't know.
Yeah.
That's what's crappy. But I like to take an average. I like to see what the super hosts in the area are earning. And the reason why I choose super hosts is because they're showing me what my potential is. Because I know they've done a good job. So I look at what they're earning and then on average, like what the cleaning fee is. So I'll take like 10 hosts in the area and I'll just see, hey, it's like $50 for cleaning for a 1-bed, 1-bath. Okay. I know it's probably going to be around that, but the model is simple, but there's so many variables that can really screw up the whole operation, right? Check in, check out, bad guests, too high of rent if you're renting, a bad landlord. There's so many things, so I think that when analyzing the deal or looking for a homeowner to get convinced, like you're the person I should work with, I like to tell the homeowner, hey, I'm a potential buyer, not in every situation, but I'm probably either going to be your last tenant you're ever going to need. I'm a potential buyer. And if you let me try this, I'll even give you a premium. So I'll give you an example. On the 1-bed, 1-bath, somebody might charge $1,500 a month for rent here in Calgary. Well, I might go to them and say, you know what? Instead of the $1,500, I've already went and analyzed this deal. I can see it's probably going to make about 60 grand a year. And that's after cleaners have paid. And that's a big thing, right? If you're not running your own cleaning company and expense for that. So let's just say it makes 60 grand a year. 1,500 a month is going to bring me to $18,000 a year. I know I have a considerable profit at that rate, but that's at let's say an 80% occupancy. I always try to aim for 80% at minimum. And then I know that if the homeowner is not convinced at the $1,500 mark, I'll offer them $500 more a month, or I'll tell students to do this. And I'll say, okay, well, if you can make them $6,000 more a year, that's 24 in a year. And now they're making more money. Or you could pitch, hey, I've done the numbers. Here's the data from AirDNA, BNB Investor, Nash Pfizer. This is how much Airbnbs in the area are making. I usually like to pitch 30%. I'll take 30%. You take 70%. So if we make 60, I'm taking 18, you're taking 42, which is considerably almost 3 times more than you were asking for initially. Even if we fall short, I'll come up with the difference.
I love it. It's 100% about knowing your numbers, and you have to get confident in that. So, last question here, and then I want people to see what's possible with this and really understand where you're moving your model and how you're scaling this. But, I'm brand new. I don't have a single review. Heck, I don't even have an Airbnb site. How in the world am I going to go to a landlord and either convince them that I'm going to rent this and sublet it on Airbnb safely, or that I'm going to manage for them and get them their number? Give me that confidence that I can go out and do this, even though I've never hosted one night on Airbnb. What's the one bit of advice that you would give there?
I would come in with options. Like I said, not everybody, like if I'm in a supermarket and I'm just selling apples, maybe somebody wants a banana. And so if I'm coming in with different options, upsells, downsells, and Apple is great for that. For example, they're a great brand. They sell you on everything. So what I'm saying is I'm going to look at that property. I'm going to analyze the deal. If it's in an apartment or a condominium, I'm going to look at the HOA rules in the United States. In Canada, it's bylaws or strata. Um, so I'm going to actually go in. Usually what I'll do is if it's in a condo, and I actually prefer, believe it or not, I prefer smaller units over bigger units because the turnover rate I find is a lot easier and less problems with parties.
Yep.
So what I'll do, number one, I'll analyze the deal. I'll plug it into AirDNA Rentalizer. Then I'll go to B&B Vestor. I'll plug it in there. Then I'll go to Mashvisor, plug it in there. I'll have an Excel spreadsheet. I'll look at how all that data correlates. And let's just say I get an average of it making 50 grand a year, but I know the rent's going to be $1,200. So this homeowner thinks I'm coming in and I'm just going to rent that property from them. And I'm going to be the only tenant, but they don't obviously want Airbnb yet. So I've had students go ahead and make hundreds of phone calls and land deals over the phone. I recommend showing up in person and getting used to making that relationship initially.
Yes, definitely.
100%. It's going to be easier to close. So I would say I would come up with the model on how much are they going to make if I take 30%. And 30% is what I tell people to start at because it might come lower. The homeowner might be like, I'll do 20.
Yeah.
I try to say, look for furnished places if you can, because then you don't have to furnish it. It's not always necessary. You can furnish and still make a considerable profit. So let's just say I'm looking on hot pads. I'm looking in downtown Chicago and I filter out for rent by owner and I can see, 100 different listings. Well, I need to go through, and I recommend you do this. You go through, you plug in each of those addresses to those different softwares, you get the different price points, and you go directly to Airbnb and look at downtown Chicago. Again, you can't tell if a date is blocked out, but if somebody has high reviews and it shows the reviews are actually for the month that you're in, it's likely that they're still booking out consistently.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, and we all know the same tricks.
Yeah.
And so what I would say is that I'm going to come to that homeowner. First of all, I like to present the management deal. So I'll come with a 30-70 split. And if they fall short, if they don't make at least, let's just say, like I said, if it's 1,200, or we'll use the 1,500 a month again, 1,500 a month, but I'm saying you'll make $2,000 a month. They have to make 24 grand. And I'm seeing that it'll make 50 grand after cleaners are paid. So I'll come in and say, okay, I'll likely make 15 grand on the deal and you likely make 35. If you don't, and you only make 20 out of my 30%, I'll come up with the other 4 grand that you were supposed to make at the end of the year. It's a performance guarantee yearly, not monthly, because there's high and low seasons with short-term rentals, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
So if they say no to that, like, no, I just want my monthly rent, no problem. I'll pay you the monthly rent. Now, if they say, no, I want more monthly rent, no problem. You pay them a little bit of a premium on the monthly rent, but make sure it's not too high. So $500 is kind of where I average at.
Yeah.
I would do like $200-300 to start. Always negotiate low and end kind of where you want to be.
Yeah.
So,
I think a good book for that too is Never Split the Difference, Chris Voss. That's a really good negotiation book. But number one is and I teach this too, if you know your numbers, then you know what you can start at, you know what you can end at. And at the end of the day, like that is the number one thing, is just understand your numbers. So you've gotten to the point though in your business where, and this was why I really was interested to have you on the show. Tell people about this whole managing and hotels that you're going with and helping them fill gaps. I'm really interested in learning more about this.
100%. So I got lucky with my first hotel just through a mutual friend who owned a hotel in Canada, and we listed that hotel. We were getting way more reservations coming in by just simply putting their properties on Airbnb, believe it or not. And I said about 2.5, 3 years ago, I said, Airbnb is going to create a section with boutique hotels. And now you look, there's a section with boutique hotels.
Yeah.
The reason why is because I think that we learn a lot of lessons from businesses that went out of business because of failure to adapt. And if we look at like Netflix to Blockbuster, Blockbuster went out of business because they didn't adapt to on-demand streaming, and Netflix actually originally offered that. I don't know the whole story, but offered something like that to Blockbuster, and they said no. And so I think that Airbnb says, okay, there's all these smaller privately owned hotels. I'm not talking about Ritz-Carlton or W or any of that, but they need business. And even Wyndham Resorts is starting to list on there. We've got some partnerships that we're trying to lock in right now. I can't say the names, but they're big resort type brands that are like, oh, I didn't realize we could get listings through Airbnb. The only struggle is that when somebody books a resort, they are booking a vacation package a lot of the time. So Airbnb is really missing out on the flight package, and that's the problem.
Got it. Okay.
So I got lucky with my first one. A friend of mine said, yeah, we want to make more money out of this hotel. Then COVID hit, which sucked. and it was a great location, which is key with any real estate. But I realized that why not, instead of everybody going out of business, hosts failing, Airbnb was sucking hosts of fees and canceling bookings and all
Right.
these things when the pandemic hit.
Right.
Brian Chesky was in hot water. And so I think that what our model was, and I have a business partner, his name is Otis. He's actually here in Canada. He's on the other side of Canada. He's in Ontario. He was a student of mine. And Otis came to me and said, well, why don't we do this on a larger scale? And I said, I'm already doing it. But he says, why don't we consistently grow? And why don't we try to recoup lost funds for those that couldn't book during the pandemic and still can? And I said, okay, how do we do it? And he's like, well, that's why I came to you. I want you to come up with the process and the systems. And I said, well, okay, well, there's platforms like Guesty and Hostfully and IGMS and all these PMS softwares, but how can we just come in and give a no-brainer offer that provides value, increases revenue and occupancy without charging them a high monthly retainer like social media marketing does? You go to them and you're like, it's $5,000 a month for SEO, email marketing, and funnels. It's expensive for a lot of business owners and they want to see the value up front. So we go to these hotels, to cut it short. We go to these hotels and we connect with a lot of them on LinkedIn because that's where the decision makers are.
Okay.
They're not on Instagram. They're on LinkedIn. And there's different automations you can use with LinkedIn. And you can actually start sending out mass amounts of messages. So if I make 2,000 new connections with specific owners of management companies in the vacation rental space or hotel owners, then I know I'm reaching the perfect target and I'm not really trying to sell them at first. And so I bring up the conversation over time and I say, hey, like, we have a no-brainer solution for you. We notice you're on Expedia, Booking, Agoda, Mr. B&B, and all those other sites, but you're not on Airbnb. Yes, you can be, and yes, you can do it yourself because that's always the first objection. But what we can do is we know how to rank, and I created a little system using Facebook ads to rank my Airbnbs within the organic Airbnb system higher up in the search results by driving more traffic to my listing for so cheap. And making sure that they still convert. Because if they don't convert and you get high views, typically they'll derank the listing, just like Google. So yeah, that helps us rank up and get our listings higher, increase occupancy for our guys at the hotels. But at the same time, we created a platform called Plenty of Villas, and we're still working on this massive project. It's taking forever. But the Plenty of Villas is like Airbnb, but we market directly only for direct bookings on that platform. So we'll connect with different travel agents. We'll connect with different influencers. I'll use my brand. We'll run ads and we'll get direct bookings and we'll offer these companies direct bookings, which is super valuable. It's just another platform. And we don't charge them any setup fee, ongoing fee. We only charge them a percentage, anywhere typically from 15 to 30% for every booking that we bring in. So we've been able to scale that way. And now we have, I believe we just onboarded 2 more. Otis usually takes care of that. But I believe we're at about 10 different clients. And a lot of those properties we can't list on Airbnb because they all don't want them on there. So yeah, we have, I think, just over 2,000 now, roughly 2,300. I can't remember the exact number.
Wow. That's amazing. So, I mean, just to really simplify this, what you've done and what it sounds like happened right around COVID is basically through all these vacancies that you were seeing in hotels, you just basically said, we can go in and have relationships with these hotels, list their vacancies on Airbnb and just charge them a management fee. There's already cleaners there. There's already furnishing. There's already all the amenities that are needed. So you're literally doing nothing except for being the mediator to getting their vacancies filled. They would have made no money anyway with a vacancy, and now you're making a little bit of money. Is that a good kind of summary of it?
You hit the nail right on the head. And I actually don't even like to say management because we're marketing. We're just marketing at this point. And you said it right with the hotels. The reason why we target the hotels is because they already have cleaners, concierge, a gym, a pool usually. And a lot of the time I can't do Airbnb in Lower Manhattan or South Beach or in a lot of places in Denver or Las Vegas. But with hotels, they're already zoned to do it. So why not just adapt with them?
That's good. That's something I didn't even think about. You just completely bypass all the short-term rentals laws and regulations in all the areas. That's great. Obviously there's so much more to that, and we could probably do like an entire 17-part series on learning this, but I want to direct people to you. How can people get connected with you? How can they learn more from you?
Yeah. Just again, Instagram is my biggest thing. I'm doing this new Clubhouse thing too. That seems like a great platform to just connect with people directly. But
Cool.
Instagram, Mr. Airbnb, MRAIRBNB, no spaces, underscores, periods, numbers, whatever. It's very
Awesome.
simple. And I do have a program. I was going to mention this
Yeah.
slightly. So it's called BNB PhD. It encompasses as an 8-week program. There's roughly 50 plus 54 videos. And I show you all, and Kyle has a program too, guys. So whoever's listening, just get both. um, so what it has is my different draft mass releases, management contracts, marketing contracts. Again, it's going to vary, as you know, Kyle, like anywhere you go, contracts are different, but you can see what I've actually used and my scripts I've used to land homeowners. And over time, honestly, you're just going to get rid of the script. You're just going to go directly in and just know what to say, know your numbers. And it just gets easy. So the program is there. It's normally $2,000. Like most people, I have it on for $1,000. I'm actually going to raise that price. The goal is to up to $3,000 this year, just because there is a lot of time and effort. And as you know, it takes a lot to make these programs work. So if you want more information on that, you can actually try the first week for free. And you can do that for a week. And if you don't like it, then you don't like it. But if you love it, then there's an option to come in at that half price point. Yeah, I think you guys should just go with both programs so you can learn the most knowledge.
I love it. I love it. Hey, Braydon, thanks so much for being on the show today, man. Guys, go check out the course. We'll have it in the show notes as well, but you can see all of that on his Instagram, Mr. Airbnb. Braydon, any last words for our audience before we log off?
No, just start now. Airbnb just went public, so I think a lot of more awareness is about to happen with the company.
I love it. All right, cool, man. Hey, thanks for letting us take a little bit of your time and helping our audience to conquer the world of Airbnb. We'll see you later, man.
Thanks.
All right, show notes for this one, fearlesskyle.com/Mr. Airbnb, MR Airbnb is how you're going to spell that. Go check out his course. Guys, I'm in an abundance mindset. I was talking to Braydon about this. He was like, hey, should I share the course? No, share it. I want people to resonate with their teacher, and I want you to be successful in Airbnb. So if Braydon is your guy, if I'm your guy, it doesn't matter. Just go and get started. Buy either course. Get started in it. His is a free 1-week trial. Heck, I might start doing that too. That actually sounded like a really good idea. But either way, I think you should definitely go check out his stuff. Again, fearlesskyle.com/Mr. Airbnb. And that's where you can find out all the details. Get connected with him on Instagram too, Mr. Airbnb. All right, that's going to do it today for the Fearless Investor Podcast, where we're helping you to conquer the world of investing and especially today, conquer the world of Airbnb. We'll talk to you next time.